So, students, up till now we have seen that Jerome has packed the bag after packing and unpacking and repacking 3 times, and now the rest of the packing of that hamper was been left to George and Harris. Now, let us move ahead how they did that packing of that hamper. They began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. So, finally, both the friends George and Harris took up the complete session in a very light-hearted, in a very energetic manner with lots of enthusiasm, and the intention was to show the author Jerome that see how much flaws were there in your packing skills, and now let us show you how to pack the things. So, I only waited. With the exception of George, Harris is the worst packer in this world, and I looked at the piles of plates, cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes and tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. So, George was finding there were n number of things which were required to be packed in that hamper, and all the tomatoes and jars and pies and lots of foodstuffs, the stoves, the kettles and the plates and cups, the cutlery, and there are n number of things, the butter, the jam. So, finally, and he knew that Harris was a real bad packer, and he considered him to be the worst packer in the world. So, with this conclusion, finally, he expected that the upcoming packing session would be quite exciting, and it will rejuvenate and it will make the complete session to be funny. I did. It did. They started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. So, finally, they both started, and in the start they broke a cup, and there they started with the session, and breaking of the cup made Jerome to realize, and finally he was being confirmed that the session would be quite interesting for that complete packing of all those things. So, then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of tomato and squashed it, and they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. So, this was the next thing which happened. They placed a tomato at the bottom, and then he packed the jam. So, what happened? Tomato just squashed, it was smashed, it was being squeezed, and it was destroyed. Finally, they took out that tomato with the help of a teaspoon, and that is how that was the first thing which destroyed. Second thing rather, first thing was the cup, and now second thing was the tomato. And then it was George's turn, and he trod on the butter. So, trod on means stepped on. So, it was the next thing which happened was George's, what he did, he just stepped on a butter, and I did not say anything, but I came over and sat on the edge of the table and watched them. So, it was becoming very exciting for the author to watch all the things which were being happening, and so out of excitement he just came forward from the sitting area, and he sat on the edge towards the end of the dining table, so that he could watch in a more exciting manner. He could enjoy that exciting session of packing further now. So, with this session going further, it irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that I made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them and then couldn't find them when they wanted them, and they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. So, as the author made his presence in between that packing session over the dining table, that made both of them to be a bit more nervous, and they were been making more mistakes. They were stepping on the things were being smashed, they were unable to pack them properly, they packed the pies at the bottom, and finally the pies were being totally smashed, and that made pies to be basically damaged. So, all the things were being moving in a very exciting manner. Further, they upset salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men more than 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. So, the next thing was the salt was being spread everywhere, and thereafter there was a complete big session, a very funny session which happened with the butter, and Jerome has been saying here what he said, that he had never seen two men making such a funny session with the butter. He has never found such thing been happened earlier in his life. And what exactly happened was, after George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in a kettle. So, as earlier George stepped on the butter and he took it out from his slipper and he placed the butter inside a kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. So, butter was never in, they were unable to place the butter inside the kettle because it was quite big to be placed inside. Okay. So, they did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harris sat on it and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. So, what happened exactly? Since it was not inside the kettle, they placed Harris. What he did? He was unable to identify, he just forgot that the butter was being placed on the chair, and he sat on that chair where the butter was being placed, and that butter it just stuck Harris' bottom, and Harris was unaware, and they both went looking for the butter all around the room. Now, I will take my oath I put it down on the chair, said Harris, starting at the empty seat. Now, staring at the empty seat. Now, what happened? As they were about to pack the butter, and here George was trying to find out where the butter has gone basically, and he was he was swearing that I just kept it on the chair and now where it has vanished. I saw you do it myself not a minute ago. And here Harris also confirms that yes, I saw you that you placed the butter on the chair. Now, where that butter has gone? Then they started round the room again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. So, finally, they were taking a round in the complete room, looking here and there everywhere in the room, and they both finally at the end of their session of searching the butter, they finally met into the center of the room, finding out where the butter has gone, and they both were being quite surprised to find that why they are unable to find the butter and where it has gone. Okay, so what happened here after that? Most extraordinary thing I had ever heard of, said George. So mysterious, said Harris. So they both were being quite surprised, not finding the butter, where it has been vanished, and they are still finding the answer to that question where the butter is. So, why, here it is all the time, he exclaimed. Now, what exactly happened is, then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. Finally, George was able to find the butter, and where he found the butter was at the Harris bottom. It was been stuck in Harris bottom, and they were been searching it around in the room. Now finally George, when he looked at the back of Harris, he found that butter was still stuck at Harris' back. So finally he exclaimed that there is the butter, and here it was all the time, and we have been searching it around completely for like a mess in the complete room. Where? Cried Harris, spinning round. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, and flying after him. So Harris was still been surprised that where he had found the and he was just looking at his back and was trying to find out where that actually the butter is being stuck, and to find that he just turned, and George was been stopping him to stay still so that he can take out the butter from his bottom. Now, and they got it off and packed it in the teapot. Finally, they found the butter, and it was at the Harris bottom, and it was quite funny to find that butter in that manner. And then George, he took out the butter and he placed that butter inside the tea kettle, in the teapot. Montmorency. Now here there is an entry of another character, of another funny character, that is Montmorency, that is the dog here. Okay. And Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in the way and be swarmed at. So Montmorency is a very notorious dog who is been pet of Jerome, and he was also been the part of that packing session, and wherever Harris and George had been finding the things and doing the things and packing them, everywhere Montmorency was been there in that room. So, and as the author says here that Montmorency's ambition in his life was to get in the way. So every time he used to come in the way of the things, whatever been the activity which was been going on, and whenever he was been be sworn at means he was been scolded. Whenever he got scolded, then he used to withdraw back from that whatever the mischievous thing he was into. Now, if he can scream in anywhere where he particularly is not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have fun. So this is, see here we can see Montmorency been here messing the things, packing, which was the packing of the hamper which was been going on, and here Montmorency was being scolded again and again by George and Harris, because he was making the things even more tough for both of them. So finally he used to get back from all those nuisance when the things were thrown at his head, and then he feels his day has not been wasted. So whenever he finds that he was being scolded so badly that people get so irritated that they keep running with the things to hit him, so in that manner he finds that his day has been accomplished, the mission is been done, and he has finally got the things missed. And this is how that was all about here, that how Montmorency used to be a nuisance for the people. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object, and when he has succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. So another aspect was, whenever anybody walks, he used to come in between and the person used to stumble down, and because of that the person used to curse him that why he has come in between and made him to stumble down. So, in that manner what happened, the person, and whenever he does so, he feels that he has accomplished his job and that was his highest aim. The most notorious thing which he wanted to do was to come in between the people, the passage, and to make them stumble down. So, finally, this made him to be, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. That means, conceit means his pride in himself. That means, author is projecting like that, that whenever Montmorency used to succeed to make people stumble over him, he used to feel proud of whatever he has done up till now. So, that is how Montmorency is, and how he was been making the things to be even more messer than what all the things were been going along with George and Harris. He came and sat down on things just when they were wanted to be packed, and he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris and George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold damp nose that they wanted. So, there was another aspect here. What Montmorency used to do was, he was doing that whatever he used to just sit on the things which were being required to be packed. So, whenever George and Harris were been searching around the things, they found those things were being hidden under Montmorency, and he was been sitting on those things, rather than it was the way he was been making nuisance. And another thing which was been irritating, that whenever Harris and George, they were trying to fetch the things from here and there, they were finding that Montmorency was coming out and keeping his nose over there along with the things, and whenever they used to touch anything, they used to feel the dampness and coldness of Montmorency's nose over there with the things. So, that was also quite irritating for both George and Harris. It was quite funny also, every time finding Montmorency's nose along with the things. So, that even made it more tougher for them. So, he put his leg into the jam. The next thing which Montmorency did was, he put his leg into the jam, and he worried the teaspoons, and he pretended that lemons were rats and got into the hamper and killed 3 of them. So, finally, the next thing what Montmorency did, he placed his leg inside the jam bottle, and now they made it to be out. Finally, after that what he did, he just made all those teaspoons to be upset and disturbed, and then after that what he pretended, he just found lemons in the hamper, and pretending that these lemons are probably rats, just imagining this, he just jumped inside the hamper and he squashed 3 lemons, pretending that he had killed 3 of the rats. So, he made complete hamper to be totally disturbed, and the lemons were being destroyed by Montmorency, and Harris could land him with the frying pan. And looking at all these mess and nuisance which Montmorency had created, finally Harris was running after Montmorency with a frying pan to hit him, so that he can make Montmorency to move away from the hamper. So, in this way, this was another funny things which were been going on, and making the packing of that hamper to be even more exciting for Jerome. Harris said, I encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. So, Harris was been complaining to Jerome that you have encouraged your pet to do all this, to create all this nuisance, whereas Jerome was been defending that he has never encouraged him. A dog like that doesn't want any encouragement. It is the natural original sin that is born in him that makes him to do things like that. So, finally, he concludes that Montmorency himself is so a dog with hyper excitement, and he always been a nuisance for all the things which were been happening, and there is no encouragement been required for Montmorency to create nuisance. So, basically he was been born with this innate quality to create nuisance. Now, the packing was done at 12:50 and Harris sat on the big hamper, said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken, which reflection seemed to comfort him. He also said he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night and we went upstairs. So, finally, by the time it was 12:50, the complete packing of the hamper was done, and as soon as the hamper was being packed, at that same moment Harris, he just sat on that packed hamper, on that basket, and the moment he sat on that hamper, he realized that probably few things must have broken because he just sat on the hamper. And to pacify and to make him comfortable, George was saying that if something had been broken, it would have been broken, not to worry, we will see it later on, and now it is high time we should go for bed. So, all the three friends they went upstairs to sleep, because on that very day even George was also going to be there with Harris and Jerome. So, Harris was to be sleeping with them for that very night, because on that day he was not going back to his place, and all the three they were been sleeping there in the for that night. We tossed for beds and Harris had to sleep with me, he said. So, finally, they had a toss, and out of that toss the result was, it was decided that Harris and Jerome, they will be sharing one bed and George will have the will sleep on the another bed. Do you prefer the inside or the outside, Jay? I said. So, Harris asked a question whether you will be sleeping towards the wall or you will be sleeping outside. So, with that Jerome he answered, I said I generally preferred to sleep inside a bed. Harris said it was odd. So, this was Jerome's decision, and he decided that he would sleep towards the inside of the bed, towards the wall side, and this Harris found it quite strange also. What time shall I wake you fellows? George asked, and Harris said 7. I said no, 6. So, there was another discussion which was going amongst the friends, because George came out with the question that when they are about to wake up in the morning, and Harris came out with the suggestion that they should wake up at somewhere around 7, whereas Jerome he said that he wanted to wake up at somewhere at 6, because I wanted to write some letters. So, Jerome he wanted to write some letters, so he asked George that the alarm should be put, or he should wake both of them by 6. Harris and I had a bit of row over it. So, but at last split the difference and said 6:30. So, they finally managed to pacify the situation, and a common consent was being drawn for 6:30 and wake us at 6:30, George, we said. So, with the final consent, they both made a statement that they should wake up at 6:30 and George should wake them up at 6:30. George made no answer, and we found on going over, and he had been asleep for some time. So, we placed the bath where he could tumble into it on getting out in the morning and went to bed ourselves. So, finally, with the last thing which happened was when George and Harris as well as Jerome, they all went to sleep, and the moment Harris was asleep, Jerome and George, they both played a prank. And what the prank was that they placed a bathtub just next to their bed, so that whenever Harris will wake up in the morning, he will just tumble down inside, he will just fall down inside the bathtub, and that is how they will enjoy seeing Harris to be falling into the bathtub. So, with planning, after planning this complete prank, they all went to bed, and in this manner this complete session was been over and the packing was been done, and they were finally ready to move on to their journey for the next day. Now, in this manner we have all covered our chapter here. We have done all the various key aspects and discussed the things here. So, hopefully you will find the video you can go ahead with the video and to understand the things, find the PDF, do the PDF work also, so that you can completely understand the chapter well. All the doubts which arise in your mind, we will be taking up all those things in the live session. Thank you, students.